I'm talking about the 10 Commandments. These 10 guidelines are almost universally accepted as the 10 basic rules of decent humanity, right? If you are a moral human being, you stick to these 10 guidelines. Now, I say that, but the first three often give people a little bit of trouble because the first three are about our priorities. And a lot of people would just like to stick with 5 through 10, just not do bad stuff, and not let the commandments really affect their heart, right? Because the commandments, when we start with those first 3 and 4, those commandments actually deal with our priorities and our relationships. In fact, the 10 Commandments were given as a relational code rather than a set of rules. We even see this in here. It starts out with, I am the Lord your God. Not, I am the Lord, the God of the universe. No, I am the Lord your God. I am in a relationship with you. And if you keep reading in Scripture, it'll say, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, who brought you out of a place of slavery into a place of goodness and freedom where you have all this abundance available to you, right? The whole set of the commandments are bookended in terms of this relationship, right? The commandments are quintessentially about being in a relationship with a God who cares for you and wants the best for you, right? And he gives us these guidelines to help us live to the fullness of our potential. Actually, you'll notice as you get further down, a lot of people read the commandments starting with 5 as, do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, don't have any bad fun. But actually, that's not what they say, right? They say, you shall not kill. In other words, if you're in a healthy, authentic relationship with a Father in heaven who loves you and is going to take care of you and is taking care of everything in the world, of course you wouldn't kill. That's the outcome of the relationship. It doesn't say do not as a command. It says you shall not in that future indicative tense, which tells us this is the outcome of a relationship with God. This is the way of being that happens when you've got a Lord and a God who's taking care of you. That's the first important thing I want to share, and I want to make sure you're able to convey to your kids, especially if any of you out there have messed up on the Big Ten here, right? If you've messed up on the Big Ten, hey, take a deep breath, get yourself to confession, a great model for your kids, and restart that relationship with God. Because he wants to take the initiative in your life so that you don't have to deal with the brokenness of killing, of stealing, of committing adultery, of lying, of all of these broken behaviors, even the ones that get into our mind like coveting, right? He wants to heal your heart of all of that and make you into the healthy sort of person who doesn't even have these sorts of things on your radar, right? Because you are in a relationship with a God who loves you. Last thing before I go, about the tougher ones on the back. A lot of people look at these and say, oh, well, that's nice and good in theory, but really, how blessed are people who mourn? Like, isn't that the opposite of mourning? Doesn't that mean you're dealing with some bad stuff? And yes, to a degree, it does. But the happiness promised to us in the Beatitudes isn't just about future happiness or happiness in heaven, right? Everything might suck now, but eventually things are going to get better. Actually, the Beatitudes promise us a start to happiness now and an even bigger happiness later in eternity. What does that start look like? When we look at things like people who are poor in spirit, the first beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit. In other words, blessed are the people who go through life with an open hand, as opposed to a closed fist gripping onto everything that comes their way, right? And we see this. We know this from life. People who are open to whatever life has for them are happier than the people who are grasping at passing things and always trying to get ahead and trying to control a life that's so much bigger than them. Blessed are those who mourn. The only people mourning are the people who cared enough to have something to lose. People who mourn are people who loved, right? And we all know that's essential to our happiness. In order to be people who are happy right now in this life, we have to care. We have to be invested enough that we have something to lose, that we can mourn in the end. Blessed are the meek. This, contrary to popular belief, is not referring to people who are weak or who have no strength. That's not what we want to encourage in your kids. Rather, people who are meek are strong enough that they don't need to prove it. In other words, they're the kid who's going to win every arm wrestling match, but doesn't need to challenge anyone because they're secure enough in themselves that they don't have to prove to other people whether they're good enough or not, right? Meekness is interior strength. It's the most difficult kind of strength to come by, but that's the kind of thing we want to foster in your kids. And we all know people who have that core, who have that security in themselves, they're going to be happier than people who are always trying to prove themselves to others, who are always waiting on other people's approval. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, people who are after justice. Of course, that's a recipe for happiness, admittedly with a lot of disappointment in this lifetime, but you're going to be far better off if you're pursuing justice, pursuing righteousness, than if you're just content with all the things that are broken in this world. Blessed are the merciful, the people who are able to let go of wrongs, right? The people who are able to forgive. Not because they're letting the person who did something wrong off the hook, but because they're letting their own hearts off the hook. They're freeing their hearts up to be happy again. Blessed are the clean of heart. Please, 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 parents, preserve that innocence in your beautiful little children. We often don't recognize what a gift that innocence, that purity of heart is until it's gone. Make sure you're guiding them in what to watch and what they're interacting with online, who their friends are, all these things that can keep their hearts clean. Of course, what a blessing it is to be able to reach adulthood one day and still have not naivety, but innocence, purity embedded deep within them, right? Blessed are the peacemakers. Who doesn't want their kid to be a peacemaker? Again, another one pretty self-explanatory here. People who make peace in this world, right? Of course, they're freeing themselves up for a greater degree of happiness, right? Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. In other words, blessed, happy are those who are strong enough to stand up for what they believe in, right? We all know those weak-spined people who go through life just adopting the opinion that's popular at the time. Those people are never secure enough in themselves to be authentically happy. But the people who are willing to accept persecution for their beliefs, those are the people who are strong all the way to the core, and that interior strength becomes a source of happiness and joy. It attracts people to them that'll help them live that wholesome, authentic, happy life we all want for our kids. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because you're like Jesus. Because Jesus suffered an awful lot, but he also experienced the fullness of joy that this life has to offer. He experienced friendships that went deeper than what we could ever imagine. He experienced relationships and camping trips and sailing trips and outdoors and all the fun stuff we love to its fullest extent because it wasn't tainted by the brokenness of the world. So, when your kid is being insulted, when your kid is being rejected, when your kid is being persecuted, tell them to take heart, right? We all want to protect our kids from evil, but the kind of happiness Jesus is offering your kid isn't the kind of happiness that's dependent on everything going right. Actually, Jesus wants to offer you the sort of happiness that lasts even when everything is going wrong. That's the kind of happiness that Jesus and this beautiful Catholic faith of ours has to offer to each of your kids. So, a big lesson, full of weight, but I hope between the 10 Commandments, these relational guidelines, and the Beatitudes, this recipe for happiness here and now, you can guide your kids into a place of joy that's going to stay with them for the rest of their life.